Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Jai Hind. We are looking at the unsung heroes of our national movement, and we are also celebrating the 75th year of our country's independence. Azadi ka Amrit Mahotsav. And we all know the Amrit, or the nectar for our lives, comes from what the men and women who participated in the freedom struggle have given. They have given us the Amrit, and because of that Amrit, we are happy today, we are joyous, we are enjoying our independence and our lives too. Is it not? So, celebrating our independence, we are also celebrating the greatness of the men and women who have given us this independence. And that is why we are thinking and paying our respects to the unsung heroes of the freedom movement. Whom shall we see today? I would want to look at the life of one great lady. And who was she? Rajakumari Amrit Kaur. From the very name, you can understand that she was a princess. And her name is what we are all celebrating, Amrit. Her name itself was Amrit. She was Rajakumari BBG Amrit Ahluwalia when she was born. She was born on the 2nd February 1887. She was born in a royal family, and that is why she was called Rajakumari. In the United Provinces, what we call today as Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand and all those areas, those days all those areas were together called the United Provinces. In the United Provinces was the Kapurthala kingdom. And Rajakumari Amrit Kaur was born in this family, the family which ruled the Kapurthala kingdom. She had her education in India and of course subsequently in England. And when she was in England, she was a good student. She got to know many things. And since she belonged to the royal family, she also moved with a lot of friends who belonged to the upper stratum of the society. However, she came back to India sometime in 1918, and it was her father's association with people like Gopalakrishna Gokhale that motivated Rajkumari towards the freedom movement. Slowly, she was attracted by the ideas of Gokhale and then subsequently got to know about Mahatma Gandhi ji too. She met Gandhi ji in the year 1919. She was attracted by the Gandhian ideals, and a little later, she decided to become his secretary. Can you think of it? A princess who belonged to the royal family chose to become the secretary to Mahatma Gandhi. And you know how long she served as a secretary? For 16 years. 16 long years, she lived in the ashram, She was a secretary to Gandhi. She looked after all the needs of the ashram and she led a very simple life. All these when she still was the Rajakumari. And what a great gesture this was. Friends, we learn about these people. We get to know about these people. It is not for the sake of merely learning their lives or merely knowing the details of their lives that we think about these great people. What can we emulate from their lives? This simplicity which Rajakumari Amrit Kaur practiced is a lesson to us, is it not? Whatever the circumstances, can we also not practice this simplicity? Not being given to ultra comforts and luxury. There are so many things around us kind of pressurizing us to get into that kind of ultra luxury and comforts. But if we only think of these people, as a princess, she had so much, but then she did not want to enjoy all that luxury, primarily because she knew all that is impermanent, but being simple, doing the work, serving others, doing good to others are all the things that one should practice and one should live. And Rajakumari, as she met Gandhiji in 1919, she was attracted to the freedom movement, we know. But it is not only the ahimsa ideals of Gandhi that attracted this lady. Something else happened in 1919. We all know that. And that was the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Rajakumari was extremely pained to know what had happened. And she just could not understand how someone could behave to kill so many people. That brought about a great change in our mind. In fact, that was one of the reasons that she took to a life of austerity and simplicity. She advocated social reforms. She was for women's education, spreading awareness amongst people, and of course, she was also for prevention of child marriage. Sometime in 1927, she co-founded a women's organization. Rajakumari felt that all women should put in their efforts together so that they strengthen the society by their contribution. She firmly believed that women can bring about greater changes in the society. And that is why in 1927, she co-founded the All India Women's Conference. And this organization did many things for the sake of women's education and for the sake of consolidating women force. She also participated in the Salt Satyagraha, or the Dhandi March as it is called, in the year 1930. She was imprisoned for this participation, and from 1934 she decided what little comforts she had until then, she decided she would leave all of them and came to live in Gandhiji's ashram continuously. Slowly, things were changing in the National Front. The Quit India movement, Rajakumari Amrit Kaur also participated in the Quit India movement, was again imprisoned. And after the Second World War, slowly the country was on the road to acquire independence. When the country acquired independence, there was a necessity to formulate the constitution of the country. So a constituent assembly was formed, and Rajakumari Amrit Kaur naturally was made a member of the Constituent Assembly. She advocated universal suffrage, which means voting rights for everyone, transcending the barriers of caste, socio-economic status, and gender. She was also for a uniform civil code and spoke vociferously for the protection of religious rights. And when Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru formed the first cabinet of the country, the independent country, Rajakumari Amrit Kaur was made a cabinet minister. And many of you would have read in your history textbooks that she was the first woman to be made a union cabinet minister, right? She was made the minister responsible for health and welfare of the people. And her contribution as the first union health minister of the country was also incredible. She wanted people to have good health, robust health, and worked towards it. You all know 1947, August is when the country acquired independence. And within the next few months, October 1947, Rajakumari Amrit Kaur was instrumental in getting help from the Canadian Red Cross. About 93 packs of penicillin was given to India by the Canadian Red Cross, and Rajakumari brought it here. What was the need, you may ask? Today, we are in a situation where we do not even know the names of certain diseases. They have largely disappeared. But way back in 1947, as the country had just got independence, several people were suffering from many diseases. Antibiotics were not largely known. Penicillin was required to treat people, and expenditure on the account of such treatment and such health welfare measures would drain the state's exchequer. That was when we had just got independence. We needed to develop our infrastructure and so on. And that is why Rajakumari mustered support and guidance from very many other countries and got us the goodness of all that support. You all would have heard of the All India Institute of Medical Sciences at New Delhi, AIIMS we call it, is it not? And Rajakumari was the one who got the AIIMS established. Her contribution that way towards the welfare of the people, towards the health care of the people, had been enormous. She fought for malaria eradication, and she wanted to have the people of India protected from tuberculosis. In fact, she could still be credited with that great gesture of a massive promotion of BCG vaccination in the country. It was because of this promotion that many of our citizens got vaccinated and we could keep tuberculosis at bay. On your screen, you do see there Rajakumari Amrit Kaur in the company of Mahatma Gandhi, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and of course, Kasturba Gandhi. And there you see Rajakumari when she was establishing the aims, along with several of the healthcare workers, the way she surveyed them, the way she got all their cooperation in the establishment of the institute. And that is the photograph that I talked about a little earlier, receiving the packs of penicillin from the Canadian Red Cross. Rajakumari Amrit Kaur is a great name to remember and, of course, to respect. And as we see from our perspective today, what we should do for the sake of unity of people, for the sake of giving them health care, amidst a lot of misgivings, Rajkumari worked. And I think that is the lesson that we need to learn. There would be problems, there would be difficulties. Difficulties would not completely fade away. But with all those problems, we need to do our work. We need to think of how to circumvent those problems and get to work or get what we really want. And that is how she established the aims at New Delhi. There were so many difficulties, so many hurdles. She crossed them one by one, never ever losing her wonderful smile. The government of India paid the respect to this great lady by releasing a postage stamp in her honor. Shall we salute Rajakumari Amrit Kaur? And with that Amrit giving us more and more energy, it is yet another woman whom we are going to look at today. Many of you would have guessed who this woman would be. A name which cannot be separated from the national movement of Bharat. And who else than the Nightingale of India, Sarojini Naidu. Sarojini Naidu was originally Sarojini Chattopadhyay, the daughter of Agornath Chattopadhyay. She was born on the 13th of February 1879 and she belonged to a Bengali family, being the daughter of Agornath Chattopadhyay and Varada Sundari Devi. Her native area is the Bikrampur area. Bikrampur is near Dhaka, which is currently in Bangladesh, but then which was part of the Bengal province. Agornath Chattopadhyay was working at Hyderabad at the Nizam's College. He was a great scholar and a pandit. Because of his job, the family was at Hyderabad, and that is where Sarojini grew up. Her education was at Hyderabad, and subsequently she went to England for further studies. Those days, since India was part of the British colony, it was part of the colonial empire, several people went to London and different parts of England for their higher studies. In fact, Sarojini was sent to England on a scholarship which was patronized by Osman Ali Khan, the descendant of the Nizam family of Hyderabad. And at England, she came across other Indians who had gone to England for further studies. Also, the poetess in her blossomed when she was in England. She was attracted towards the aesthetic movement and the decadent movement when she was in London. These were movements related to arts and poetry and literature, and she was naturally attracted to these movements. She met other artists, other poets, and had a lot of interaction with them. However, in 1898, she completed her studies at England and returned to India, of course, to Hyderabad. It was in Hyderabad that she met Dr. Govindarajulu Naidu. Dr. Govindarajulu Naidu was a medical man and was a practicing doctor. Love blossomed between the two. There was quite a lot of opposition for them to get married because Sarojini belonged to the Bengali Brahmin family and Govindarajulu, as the name indicates, was a Telugu-speaking Naidu. There was quite some opposition. However, Dr. Govindarajulu Naidu was firm on his decision. So was Sarojini. Agornath Chattopadhyay supported the wedding. And it is a proud privilege for people of Chennai and people of Tamil Nadu to know that their marriage took place in the city of Chennai, then called Madras. At Madras was another doctor by name Dr. M.C. Nanjundarao, and it was at his residence that the marriage of Sarojini and Govindarajulu took place. The two lived very happily. They proved a great match. Sarojini was a fiery orator. Even in the early 1900s, her oratory skills attracted the society. She used to travel to different places and make fiery speeches on the need for the country's independence. She took part in several social reform movements. She felt social reforms were the need of the hour so that the country could slowly march towards Swaraj. It was only in 1914 that she met Mahatma Gandhi ji. But before that, she met Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy, yet another great woman about whom we shall see a little later. The friendship between Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy and Sarojini Naidu gave room at large for several social reform ideas and movements, especially concentrating on the development of women. In 1917, she co-founded the Women's Indian Association, yet another organization that was formed to help women, to get women into one common hold, to consolidate their efforts and be supportive to one another. Since Sarojini was based at Chennai very often, she also came in contact with Dr. Annie Besant of the Theosophical Society. And along with Dr. Besant, Sarojini was involved in the Home Rule movement too. When the Lucknow Pact was being signed, Sarojini supported the Pact because the Pact envisaged Hindu-Muslim unity. You can imagine what would have been her way of thinking. She had a very wide vision, and that was not in the 2022 and 2023, but then it was all in the 1900s. Slowly, Sarojini got involved more and more in the freedom movement. As I told you earlier, she would travel to different places and make speeches regarding the necessity for independence. And thereby she came in contact with people like Gopalakrishna Gokhale, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rabindranath Tagore, Sarala Devi Chaudhurani, and so on. From 1917 onwards, she was also actively involved in the Satyagraha movement, in the civil disobedience movement. As part of the responsibility that she took upon herself and as part of the Indian National Congress cooperation, Sarojini travelled to different parts of England and to South Africa. These travels were the sake of consolidating support for the Indian independence movement. When the Salt Satyagraha was declared by Gandhi, Sarojini participated in it. At the beginning, Gandhi was not at all in favor of women participating in the Dhandi March. He thought it would be a factor of high risk because those people who participated in the Salt Satyagraha would definitely be arrested, and if women are arrested, they would be put to great hardships. And he also thought women will not be able to withstand that strain, the physical strain of embarking on a journey, a march by foot from one place to another. Sarojini Naidu convinced him that women could do that. And she proved it too. So to that level that when Gandhi was arrested on the 6th of April 1930, a few days after the march had commenced and had reached Dandi, it was Sarojini to whom he handed over charges. He was leading the march and he was arrested, and he requested Sarojini to take over. Imagine the kind of change that had occurred. The man who said women will not be able to withstand the pressure and the strain, was handing over to a woman herself. And that was the wisdom, the courage, and the power that Sarojini evinced and exhibited. Sarojini Naidu was a very soft woman, soft at heart, we would subsequently see. But then she was also courageous. Something which is soft need not be completely broken. Something that is soft can still be strong and courageous. And that is what we learn from Sarojini Naidu. She was a very, very beautiful woman, humorous, witty, and extrovert. Nevertheless, within the heart, she had so much courage, so much firm in her principles and ideals. She also participated with Mahatma Gandhi in the Second Round Table Conference. Of course, later, when she participated in the Quit India movement, she was imprisoned for 21 months. When we think about Sarojini Naidu, it is not only her participation in the various movements related to the Indian independence that we think of. We also think of her as that great poet who put Bharat in that huge literary map of the world. You know, when was her first collection of poetry released? 1905. And that collection was titled The Great Threshold, The Golden Threshold. The Golden Threshold. And if it is possible, at some point of time, for you to look at a picture of that collection, think that it is a great fortune that you're able to look at. You know why? This collection, The Golden Threshold, also had a beautiful portrait of Sarojini in those years. And that picture was drawn by John Butler Yeats. John Butler Yeats was an artist and he had an illustrious son. His son was William Butler Yeats, and William Butler Yeats reminds us at this point of something unique. You know what? Sarojini was very often referred to as the Indian Yeats. She was referred to as Indian Yeats, and it was the father of the same Yeats who painted her picture for her poet collection. And later we find her poetry had lots of nationalistic thoughts. However, in the early days, her poetry had lots of imageries, rich imageries, and that is why she was referred to as Yeats, because in the English poetry world, you will find Yeats' poetry has several imageries. She is very often referred to as the Nightingale of India because her poetry gives us that joy of the universe. It is not the shallow or the restricted joy of one single individual or the restricted joy of only the humankind, but then the joy of the universe. As I told you earlier, you find a picture of Sarojini with Mahatma Gandhi and others. And here are some of our beautiful lines of poetry. Street cries was very often hailed as a verse which comes up with inherent faith. And the cradle song, and here is her very famous palanquin bearers. Just say a few lines of this poem. She sways like a flower in the wind of our song. She skims like a bird on the foam of a stream. She floats like a laugh from the lips of a dream. She floats like a laugh from the lips of a dream. Gaily, oh gaily, we glide and we sing. We bear her along like a pearl on a string. Gaily, oh gaily, we glide and we sing. We bear her along like a pearl of a string. What beautiful imagery. This song of the palanquin bearers. The palanquin bearers, as they bear the princess inside the palanquin and carry her along, they keep singing this song. And this song gives so much of solace, so much of vibrance to every mind that sings the lines of the song, is it not? And the later day poetry of hers exhibits a lot of nationalist feelings. She writes to her country. The nations that in fettered darkness weep, crave thee to lead them where great mornings break. See that courage and that force, the motivational force. Crave thee to lead them where great mornings break. Mother, O mother, wherefore dost thou sleep? Arise and answer for thy children's sake. Arise and answer for thy children's sake. She has just imagined here that Mother India was sleeping. The mother is sleeping and the children are all running around her and waking her. Mother, wake up. We are ready here. We would want to eat. I'm hungry. Give me milk. Give me something to eat. Mother, wake up. I need to go to school. I need to do things. Just imagine the children going round the mother and waking her up. Similarly, Sarojini envisions the Indians going round Mother India and waking her up and telling her, arise, mother, arise and answer for thy children's sake. Mother, O mother, wherefore dost thou sleep? And I would like to show a small clipping here, a newspaper clipping. As you could see on the screen, this is what was reported on the 4th of April 1918 at Lahore. Sarojini spoke on the vision of life, and as she concluded her speech, she kind of told Mother India to wake up. And that is what it is. You find on the screen, waken, O mother, thy children implore thee. And she gave this call not to wake Mother India, but to awaken the spirits of all Indians. Even today, these lines are relevant because these lines do awaken the spirits inside us, the spirit to work for the nation, the spirit to work in association with our fellow men, fellow citizens, and contribute to the greatness of our country. You can see some pictures of Sarojini Naidu with several great leaders of the country. Friends, we've seen two great women. On one side, Rajakumari Amrit Kaur. On the other side, Sarojini Naidu. At this point of time, I'm reminded of a meeting that Sarojini Naidu addressed at Kanchipuram in the year 1918. That time, there was a kind of a talk. You know, people talk so many things. Sometimes they talk what is not necessary to. So there was a kind of a criticism on Sarojini Naidu in 1918, saying that as a poet, she should stick to poetry and not participate in the national movement. In the 1918 Congress Mahasabha at Kanchipuram, Sarojini, kind of criticism. She said, there is a big garden, a garden full of roses, and there is also a skyscraper in the middle of the garden. And is the duty of the poet to sit in that skyscraper and just keep singing poetry? Just because the garden is beautiful and then you're touching the skies and remain there? Is it not the duty of the poet to look around, look at the people around, and give them the correct guidance? Is poetry only to recap nature? Is poetry not for mankind? She asked. And alongside this, she also said, any Indian belonging to any occasion or profession has a bounden duty to work for the nation. You know why I recapped this particular meeting? This sentiment that every Indian will have to work for the nation was totally taken and evinced by yet another unsung hero, and his name is Tiruppur Kumaran. Nachimutta Kumaraswamy was born on the 4th of October 1904. He belonged to a small place called Chennimalai near Erode in Tamil Nadu. He was born at Melapalayam near Chennimalai. His parents wanted him to study. His father was Nachimuttu and his mother was Karupai Ammal. They wanted their son to study, but fortune would have it, or misfortune would have it, that they could not support their son's education beyond the 5th class in school. They were so poor that they could not support his education. As a school dropout after the 5th class, Kumaraswamy wanted to help his parents. So, he went to a place called Pallipalayam, which is also near Erode. At Pallipalayam, his maternal uncles were involved in weaving. In fact, Kumaraswamy's father was also a weaver. Since his maternal uncles were doing a little better, Kumaraswamy went to Pallipalayam and became an apprentice to his uncles. He learnt the job well. He was very sincere at work and took up to different aspects of weaving. In 1923, as was customary those days, he married Ramai Ammal. And now that he was married, he had to support another life and so sought livelihood at Erode and Tiruppur. Many of you would know Tiruppur in Tamil Nadu is almost a Manchester. In other words, Tiruppur has textile and garment factories. Even those days, Tiruppur had quite a number of cotton and textile factories and industries, and Kumaraswamy thought he would be able to make a decent livelihood if he settled at Tiruppur. At Tiruppur, he took up a job in a cotton factory, and though the owner of the factory was an Englishman, Kumaraswamy did his job so honestly that the owner himself was surprised to find that kind of sincerity and honesty. Kumaraswamy's job was to weigh the cotton. He was the clerk in charge of weighing the cotton. Cotton is not a heavy object, isn't it? And weighing it is very tricky because it can slip. You know, when you keep it on the plate, if it tilts a little this way, that way, the weight would also fluctuate. And then it may fly off. You know, it's so difficult to weigh cotton, especially in large quantities, and keep the weight perfect. But then Kumaraswamy was so adept that he would not allow the scales fluctuate at all. Which means his honesty and integrity also did not fluctuate. And when he was living in Tirupur, he got involved in the national movement. That was when Gandhiji's ideals were being known to others, newspaper reports of several activities going on, and Kumaran, now we call him Kumaran because Kumaraswamy had by then became Kumaran. Kumaran was in the habit of reading the newspapers regularly. Through these newspapers, he got to know of what all is happening across the country. He came to know of Mahatma Gandhi and his ideals, and also became a ahimsavadi. At Tirupur, along with his friends, he started an organization called the Deshabandhu Association of all those who are bandhus of the country, relatives of the country. He also took up to khadi. He himself, being a weaver, he took up to khadi and insisted that his wife also should wear only the khadar. He evinced a lot of interest in the national struggle, spread awareness in small pockets through his friends and by way of discussions in those areas. 1930, the Salt Satyagraha, and subsequently the Gandhi-Irvin Pact. We know these details from our history books, isn't it? Now, when the Gandhi-Irvin Pact was signed, there was a kind of a mixed reaction. The Salt Satyagraha was suspended on one side, but then after some time, people found that even the Gandhi-Irvin Pact did not give much to the country. They were disillusioned. So, in a way, the agitation continued. In 1932, on January 4th, Mahatma Gandhi was arrested. That was the time when the non-cooperation movement was at peak. Though Salt Satyagraha was suspended, boycott of foreign goods, boycott of foreign clothes all continued, and in small pockets people were protesting against British colonial rule. All these led to the arrest of Mahatma Gandhi on the 4th of January 1932. And there were protests across the country, even in small towns, against this arrest. So, at Tiruppur also, the members of the Deshbandhu Association wanted to express their protest and their sentiments. A procession was planned and the friends joined together. They mustered the support of the local people also and started a procession. Kumaraswamy or Kumaran had some friends whose names were Sundaram and Gopal. Sundaram, Gopal, Kumaran, all of them participated in that procession. Kumaran was for some years wanting to take a very active role. A few days before this procession, something else had happened. And you know what? They were protesting against the foreign clothes. So in front of a shop, a group of people were trying to express their boycott of the foreign clothes. When the people were expressing their sentiments, the British police burst crackers on the people, and Kumaran was injured. He sustained burns injuries all over, especially on his face. When he went home with those injuries, his mother was deeply pained. His wife had gone to Pallipalayam from Tirupur and she was not available, but then the mother was so pained to see the face, the distorted face of her son. Of course, within about a week's time, this procession occurred and Kumaran would not listen to anyone else but would want to lead the procession. His mother tried dissuading him. Some of his friends tried dissuading him, but he stood his ground. He held the flag, the tricolor flag, not the flag that we have now, but the same three colors with the chakra or the chakka in the center. So he held that flag and then led the procession. As the procession was moving, the police immediately came there and started charging on them, on the protesters. Kumaran was in front and sustained injuries. He was hit on the head. He would not leave the flag. He was hit on the chest. He still would not leave the flag. And that is why in Tamil we say, Kodi Kaatha Kumaran, the one who protected the flag, the one who held the flag. He lost his life, but he would not lose the flag. Kumaran sustained all these injuries, fell down. As he was brutally hit, he fell down. Sundaram, who was next to him, tried collecting Kumaran and taking him to the hospital. But then Sundaram was also hit, and Sundaram lost consciousness, did not know what happened to Kumaran. Dr. Gopala Menon, who was a doctor in the hospital, somehow was able to move these people who had fallen down. The police was still hitting and striking at the others. Dr. Gopala Menon somehow moved Sundaram and Kumaran to the hospital. And in the hospital, on the 11th January 1932, Kumaran breathed his last. He held the flag so close to him that he lost his life for the sake of the flag, for the sake of the country. And friends, thinking of Kumaran today, don't we get the lesson that standing firm on the principle, standing firm on that job, responsibility that one has picked up is what is called achievement. We all think that something can be done halfway and left at that. No. Whatever work we decide to do, whatever progress we decide to make, it is perseverance that pays. And Kumaran, to me, was an embodiment of perseverance and also an embodiment of national motivation. Friends, we have seen three of them today, and I'm sure all the three stand there at the higher level and guide us on the road towards national consensus, towards national harmony, and towards national motivation. Jai Hind.